Is it all for nothing? Is it all for nothing? The experience, the experience of being in the wilderness, the experience of learning of what wisdom can be used for the conversation as its plague. Is there a way that we can transform without passing through that experience? There is something more that I'm not touching on. And that more has a lot to do with covenant. When it comes to covenant, that's also something that is a theme within the scriptures. Exodus, land, outcome. In that midsection there is a transformative period of time where learning diet and learning key principles are central to entering into covenant. And that's what I want to focus on because exiting last week, the idea of covenant slipped. And the slipping there isn't really necessarily a slip because I've been talking about it, just haven't been blatantly saying it. And in the book of Ezekiel, this I'm saying all of this because this reminds me of something going on in the book of Ezekiel. The book of Ezekiel chapter 20. Book of Ezekiel chapter 20 verses 34 to 38, it talks about a period, a period that is an exodus. And it's almost as if it's talking about another exodus. And when you get down to the context of what is being discussed, the context is sounding very, very personal. Very, very personal. And for the sake of what I'm saying here and what I have been saying for the past weeks, I'm going to keep it into that context of personal. That wilderness period is a period where the rebels are being purged from the congregation, according to what is said in this Ezekiel 20 in these verses. That wilderness period is a period of purging the rebels from amongst the congregation. That period of the wilderness is the period of willingly entering into covenant with the one that is leading them out. Last week we touched on our members, the members of our conversation. The members of our conversation doing to Moses and Aaron, doing to us what was done to Moses and Aaron. The members of our conversation, our heart and our mind, raging against us. And that sort of fits into what is in Ezekiel 20 in these passages, is that these members have been our rebellious agents against the underlying philosophy that is within the scriptures, but we haven't known it. We haven't known it. The entire time, we have been believing that our faith, our experience, our practice, our belief, everything has been according to the scriptures. But now the experience in the wilderness is an experience where the scriptures are confronting our belief, our habits, our thought process, how we organize our conversation. That wilderness experience and the plagues of wisdom that we are acquiring to place against our experience in our conversation, we're seeing that there's rebellion all of a sudden. All of a sudden, the principles that should be bringing us closer to the scriptures, the principles that should be bringing us closer to the living God, they're actually taking us further away from both. And in doing so, they're actually taking us away from ourselves. The experience then becomes one that is personal, and it ought to be, because the rebels are manifesting. And these manifesting rebels, what are they? These are members of principles that our conversation is held together by, as if they are like glue to our belief. And the moment that what we are experiencing now, what we are now facing, concerning our devotional understanding and concerning its experience with and alongside our human being and our living experience, well, that glue is somehow becoming loose. All of a sudden, what used to tie us so tight to our belief isn't doing it anymore. And then all of a sudden, we are developing a level of hatred for what we formerly had, or for our devotional experience, or for what we perceive to be quote unquote God, or anything else along those lines. Our belief has become rebellious. Our belief has become rebellious against us, and we can't understand why. The reason why our belief has become a form of, hatred, and an outlet now, because of our confusion, because of we don't understand where we have been going or what direction we have been going in. The reason that's taking place is because our conversation is entering into an experience where it will manifest a covenant. As it says in the Psalms, form a covenant with me by sacrifice. All of mine that form a covenant with me by sacrifice. That wilderness experience is an experience for sacrificing our rebellious members. That period of being alone. You always hear about they went away for years, or they're like off the map, MIA. And when we see them again, they're singing a different tune. They're living their life in a different way. It's more natural in a sense, and it's less than what we know them to be. Well, that's because that wilderness period, that period of being alone, has given them understanding. That understanding is understanding the rebellious members within their conversation. Every single one of us have these rebellious members within our conversation. Every single one of us have members and agents that we took to be a sure foundation to what we believe, but when again confronted with general scripture, it's like light to a vampire, right? It's like light to a vampire. It can't uphold anymore. Well, that's what this period is for, and willingly allowing our conversation to go into that experience. Willingly allowing our conversation to go into that experience, we are willingly consenting to an experience where we are forming and forging a covenant by sacrifice. And this is, again, as I quoted, continue to quote from that verse in Isaiah, I will bring them by a way that they knew not. I will make crooked things straight before them. I will make darkness light. Then will they be ashamed and hate their gods. When you think about the Exodus was overall a battle against gods. It was a battle of um, hosts for religious purposes. And Israel winning is the God of Israel winning. It was a battle of gods. Even in the Exodus, it tells us, my judgments will be against the gods of Egypt. So, translating that to a more personal experience, our Exodus will also be against the gods of Egypt. And more than that, they will be against the gods that the gods of Egypt have arisen within us. And those gods are members. Those gods are particular beliefs and opinions. Those gods are theories. Those gods are habits and routines. Those gods are the things that we give our conversation to automatically, and we don't even realize it. But the sincere conversation is taken through a period of creation so that they can understand what is tragic to the experience for the purpose of understanding what to sacrifice, of understanding what tragedy to sacrifice. So that, just as it says, what is it? Ezekiel 20:34 to 38. I will bring them out from their countries into the wilderness. I will purge the rebels or the rebellious from among them, and I will enter into covenant with them. So the Exodus isn't just about an Exodus. It isn't just about plagues. It isn't just about the outcome of a planted sanctuary within a suggested and prepared terrain. It's also about willingly entering into covenant, and covenant by sacrifice. Sacrifice by trusting the experience, sacrifice by learning what has caused the experience to not trust its own experience, sacrifice by understanding what has been tragic to the conversation's growth and development and getting rid of it patiently and yet temperately, a sacrifice by understanding what to get rid of so that our conversation can be made better. Because the whole point is refashioning. The living God's, whole spiel, what makes the mind influencing the devotional experience so credible is the art of renewal. What is created is already created. As it says, after everything in the book of Genesis that was created and it was good. Same thing with our conversation, despite the era that it is created in, the one allowing that conversation to be created as it is good. Now, it is good doesn't mean that it is forever right, because it is not forever right. The art of the living God as a creator is creating, and the art of creating is in renewing. The art of renewing, I dwell in the high and the holy place with him that is of a humble heart and a contrite spirit, to renew, it says in the book of Isaiah. Put off your former conversation and be renewed, it says in the book of Ephesians. Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me, it says in the Psalms. So everything in a realistic manner has to do about renewing the state of the mind, renewing the state of the conversation's conscience. This is how we can actually know that our conversation is legitimate. This is how we can know that our conversation is guided by a higher intelligence. This is how we can know that our conversation is not fraudulent. And this is how we can know that the words guiding our experience are credible words. Because we have to begin to understand what it means to rely on words. That's what the challenge was in the original Exodus. When you read that story, how long will they not consent to my commandments? Now, there was nothing written at this time, right? When they're exiting the Exodus and they're entering into the wilderness, there is no written law, there is no book of the covenant, there is no 10 commandments. None of this literally exists at this time. Everything that exists, or that I should say that existed at that time, was mental, was understanding and comprehending via words. Same thing in our present experience. It is words that we have to grow accustomed to. It is words that we have to settle down to. Everything that may have been written, that's what the Exodus was about. The Exodus was about getting away from what was handwritten. The Exodus was about getting away from what structured their experience contrary to what they knew. Entering into the wilderness now, into that experience, nothing's written. There's no structure, there's no order. All that you have is an individual articulating principles. An individual articulating principles, and it's up to the congregation and the assembly to investigate what those principles were. Now, that's the same thing. You can go back to the garden, to Eden. There's nothing handwritten in Eden. There is nothing in Eden less than what Moses gave was in Eden. And there was only one instruction. The other instruction, contrary to that, as opposed to that instruction that was given, was to dress and to keep the garden. That means a physical labor tied to the work of the one that constructed the garden. A physical labor, meaning a mental labor, poring over that terrain, poring over and understanding what went into that terrain so that it could be what it could be. Same labor in Eden, that was mental, and that was for the devotional conversations conscience. Same labor that was in the wilderness, that was for the devotional conversations conscience. And it's the same labor that's also for us at this point in time as human beings personally. There is no place that we can say safely God exists. The only place that we can say safely that God exists is the temple that is being constructed within our heart and our mind. And all of the things that I'm hearing are little conversations that I have with people that are frustrated with church. They're frustrated with what they're hearing in church. They're frustrated with their pastors. They're frustrated with the material. And that frustration, I always say, is due to them not giving time to what is supposed to be constructed within. When giving time to what is supposed to be constructed within, we are given we are giving time to the formation of a covenant. We are entering into a relationship. We are entering into a sacred union with the one that has called our mind and our conversation out of religious error. So we can't backtrack from that. We can't avoid the influence wanting to purge our conversation's conscience from the religious world, and that's actually Hebrews 9. It is the will of the living God to purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. That's Revelation 5. You have been slain so that we may now be separated and purged from the peoples and from the nations and from the families and from the tribes of the land. The whole idea, and as weeks ago, and I found it to be an interesting thought, the whole idea of the conversation being led willingly and ignorantly and innocently into religious error for the purpose of an exodus from religious error into a higher understanding of the experience. So we have to know what error is if we're going to properly value what fact is. We cannot get frustrated at error. We cannot get frustrated at deception or at being deceived. The moment we get frustrated at error, at deception, at being deceived, we fall right into the plan of error, of deception, and of being deceived to be further erroneous, deceived, and personally deceptive. A correct frame of mind is to look at what we're going through, to see it, can't do anything but accept it. And in accepting the experience that we have been led into and that we have willingly led ourselves into, taking courage to build mental fortitude through gaining wisdom to overcome and to overturn our deception and our error. We are to look at our faults as opportunities for strengths. We are to look at our conversation, as fraudulent as it may be, as an opportunity for a more credible experience. And that can take place only as we give sway to allowing our mind to review our experience and to review the words fixed and fitting into that experience from within the scriptures. We can't get rid of the source until we have enough source to begin to properly question that source, to get true answers from it. The moment we can do this, we are actually entering into a covenant for well being, a covenant for well being that we may, through our experience, learn how to sacrifice what needs to be sacrificed to gain the lost consciousness that we have lost, that we have willingly put off from believing whatever opinion or from believing whatever theory that we previously did and previously held. Put off your former conversation, is the counsel, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. This is a theme, and a theme that fits along with the Exodus, and a theme also in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20, that just recounts or just rehearses the same things for us. We have a responsibility to our conversation, and that responsibility is to allow it time to regenerate, is to allow it time to refresh, is to allow the living God to guide it into a period of renewal. And so I'll end it there for now with that thought of renewal. Our conversation is to be renewed for the purpose of entering into a covenant with these same scriptures, entering into a covenant with the, I should say, core philosophy that is within these scriptures, the core philosophy of renewal, the core philosophy of refreshing, the core philosophy of regeneration. Should we allow our conversation to pass through its wilderness? Should we allow our conversation to separate from our human being and from the religious world, and to allow our conversation to exist without physical stuff, but with words? We will enter into a covenant with the overall and underlying philosophy within the scriptures, which is a covenant of regeneration. This is what allows the experience to be fun. This is now what allows us to take joy in getting revenge for the lost consciousness. This is what allows character to be developed. We don't really understand it, but going through this experience is an experience of building human character. Our previous experience kept our character down. We were relying on routines. We were relying on a primary idol. We were relying on a primary figure or deity. And by doing so, we were not acknowledging the quote unquote us that is within and that is also in the experience. Lost to us. Well, the Bible wants the mind, and especially the devotional conversations conscience, to regain the he or the she within, gaining the right to choose how to understand and why. Decisions make us human. Decisions make us human. Having the opportunity to choose makes us human. Our religious experience, our natural religious experience, takes this option from us and actually dehumanizes us because we willingly give ourselves to a routine without thought. The decision is made for us. The only thing that we have to do is follow the handwritten routine because the decision is made for us. The Bible comes at this from another way. I will make crooked things straight before them. I will make light dark. I will make darkness light before them. I will make darkness light before them. If I said I will make light darkness minutes ago, definitely my bad. I will make darkness light. I will bring the blind by a way that they have not known. This is an experience that is hands on. This is an experience that is intimate. This is an experience that is into the center of the conversation, to where the human being is kind of stepping aside and the conversation is receiving the right to exist, the right to choose its existence. And that's what this is honestly is about. The right for the conversation to choose its existence. That's what this period of being alone is for. That's why embracing and navigating the culture of our conversation through that wilderness that our conversation will go through and will pass by in It's for developing a culture of consciousness, for the right to choose the life of the mind. And it's a beautiful experience. It's a beautiful experience because the conversation choosing this, it moves to the human being then understanding its role and its right. And the two now working together, the two now forming an experience that is beyond pleasurable, though challenging, and will ever be challenging. Yet, no matter what we go through, we will always have the experience of our conversation passing through what it is passing through to know that we can handle anything due to the wisdom that we have within us and due to the Creator guiding it. This is what solidifies us to the mind governing our living experience, stripping away the physical stuff, getting down to what is within. This is what allows us. We can't see, we can't touch, we can't do anything, but it is our conversations, thoughts, and feelings that can see, that can touch, and that can do everything that is necessary. Activating and allowing our conversation to activate its own self is the key, is the key behind what is enjoyable about the devotional experience. Getting through the stages of pastor so and so and traveling to website and hanging on to doctrine of church this and doctrine of church that, and we have to settle down and realize that we're human beings and we have an individual human experience that the mind within the scriptures would have us acknowledge. The acknowledgement of that experience, that is the moment of liberty, because the moment of that liberty is a moment of us being able to choose life and the life of our devotional conversation for the purpose of the life of our growing and developing human constitution. The Bible's concerned with our human constitutions or human conditions, growth, and development. Should this get into its right fixture, well, then we don't have to think about anything else. Life will just fall into place with its own self because our character is being developed and will continue to with the principles of growth that the scriptures and the mind within it has been guiding it in and through. So in everything that is to go or that we will go through this week, again, remember for the purpose of creation, but also remember for the purpose of covenant, for the purpose of covenant by sacrifice. The pain that we feel, the stress that we feel against our conversation, against our thoughts and our feelings or belief, it is a pain because something needs to be sacrificed. We have to look within and reflect. Because the moment we can sacrifice that, and I'm not necessarily talking about a sacrifice that has to do with our human being. I'm primarily remaining in the context of the Bible, dealing with the sacrifice that has to do with our devotional experience. When we can get to that sacrifice and understand what that is, when we can reflect enough to understand what needs to be removed, what needs to be abstained from for the growth of our devotional conversations, thoughts, and feelings, well, then that's when our journey can begin to move into the terrain that it is supposed to. It is because they refuse to learn words that a 3-day journey ended up being a 40-year hike. A 3-day journey ended up being a 40-year trek. And it was all because of a refusal to understand or to comprehend words properly, personally, intimately. So we don't really want that because the journey shouldn't take 40 years. We may have been 40 years in religious error, but the recovery or the regeneration or the refreshing due to the sincerity of our conversation for it shouldn't take that long. The struggle is difficult. The struggle is hard. We're fighting against past beliefs that we held strong to. We're fighting against ingrained things. Sure, let that be what that will be. But we have to see reality. We have to accept what we're going through. What we're going through is a transition that we are not bringing ourselves through, but that our conversation wants us to go through because it wants it to go through it for its own self. And it wants it to go through it because it is given by the living God. We didn't give our conversation to ourselves. Our conversation was conceived by the living God. It just so happens that our human being took hold of it and threw it to the religious world. Well, we have to get that back now. And to get that back, an Exodus experience, a wilderness experience for the purpose of a covenant experience, entering into covenant. And that entering into covenant, sure, entering into the new covenant promise, which is the regeneration of the heart and the mind by the core philosophy that is within the scriptures, sure, regeneration by the new covenant promise. But this covenant that speaking of, this is a personal covenant. This is a personal covenant that we are making with the living God and with the scriptures due to our experience with them. This is a personal covenant. This is a personal covenant of regeneration, perpetual and continual. This is a personal covenant of responsibility to the growth and to the development of our conversation's conscience. This is a covenant of accepting accountability for the condition of our conversation's growth and development. This this experience that we're going through is leading to us taking accountability and responsibility to forming a covenant to never betray that covenant, to never betray that league, for upholding, according to the standard of the scriptures that we are learning, the experience. So as this week progresses, remember that. Remember that everything, though for creation, it is also for the purpose of entering into a personal covenant with the experience of creation. When we can enter into that and understand that, that makes everything a lot more enjoyable, that makes everything more right to what is going on within. The rebellious members will pass away, and we will give rise to a worthy assembly honoring the conversation as it is being reborn.